Good afternoon. We'll call this school board meeting in Richland School District 2 to order. We've just returned from executive session and certainly want to welcome the audience here tonight. I also want to welcome our viewers on Richland School District Channel 12 television who will be viewing our school board meetings, creating an opportunity for full transparency and an opportunity for them to see on the inside what goes on at our board meetings. So we welcome all of those who are watching and viewing our school board meetings. At this time, we're going to stand and we're going to have our invocation and pledge of allegiance by Ms. Corliss from Bridge Creek Elementary. And as she comes, we want to remember the family of Alexis Whitback, a rising senior at Ridgeview High School who tragically lost her life on last week.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, who declarest thy glory and showest forth thy handiwork in the heavens and in the earth, deliver us, beseech thee, in our several occupations from the service of self alone, that we may do the work which thou givest us to do, in truth and beauty, and for the common good. For the sake of him who came among us, and one that serveth, thy Son Jesus Christ our Lord, who liveth and reigneth with thee and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Wise. And as I said just before her invocation, I want to remember the family of one of our students who passed away, Miss Alexis Whitback, a rising senior at Ridgeview High School. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the current agenda and minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Manning, second by Ms. Specter. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Also, as a matter of record, we want to mention again that our fellow board member, Ms. Melinda Anderson, is still recuperating from an illness that she experienced earlier in the summer. She's home resting and doing better, but was not able to be with us tonight. And we certainly want to extend our deepest thoughts and let her know that we miss her and look forward to her return in the very, very near future. At this time, we will go into our at this time, we will have our faculty focus. Dr. Brochu.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Members of the board, it's a pleasure to introduce our faculty focus for this evening. On June 6th and 7th, some 500 teachers from Richland 2 and surrounding school districts came together for the South Carolina Midlands Summit. This summit was hosted by Richland 2. It was a 2-day conference that focused on technology integration in the classroom. Teachers attended keynote sessions by national experts and had a choice of over 80 concurrent sessions to attend. 192 teachers have since joined our Summit Edmodo group and are continuing to share their learning in a professional learning community. Donna Toiber, Technology Integration Coordinator, and Corliss Wise, a 3rd grade teacher from Bridge Creek Elementary, will share their experiences.
Good evening. We're excited to share with you this evening. We just have a few slides for you with some comments by our faculty who attended. We had faculty and staff who attended. Some teachers said this has been the most rewarding workshop I've ever attended. The summit inspired me to teach outside of the box. It was awesome to interact with teachers from other local districts. And the SE Midlands Summit was awesome again, learning many new tools that I'm very excited about. It was a great conference. Thanks for allowing other districts to attend. I learned a lot. I thought Jamie's keynote was fantastic. He really taught that teacher a lot about thinking about our 21st century students. The next slide, just a few more comments. Best conference I've ever attended. A star is born. I can hardly wait until next school year to start implementing what I've learned. And then we just have a few photos. We had 500 faculty and staff members over 300 from our district and then others from surrounding districts with keynote speakers, as you can see there, lots of new ideas shared. Networking, the teachers had a great opportunity to network with others in other school districts, and they're still networking on our Edmodo group. They're still having great conversations. Practicing, lots of time to practice what they were learning with hands-on and their technology tools. And it was content specific. We had a lot of sessions that addressed the content that our teachers need to teach in the classroom. And then the collaboration. Collaboration is continuing as we collaborate with others on great ideas for working in the classroom. And Corliss Wise, who's a third grade teacher at Bridge Creek, is going to share what she learned at the summit.
Good evening,
Good
Dr.
evening.
Brochu, Dr. Washington, I'm sorry she's not here, Board Chair, the Honorable Calvin Jackson, and the board members. First, let me just say how impressed and proud I am to be in this district for the district to put on such a grand summit this summer. In this digital world that we're living in, I learned at the South Carolina Midland Summit in June. It was an amazing experience for me. Again, thinking outside the box. And it felt good being a student again. But most importantly, I plan to use and integrate this technology in my classroom this fall, and I'm very excited. There were many Summit Google Apps for education sessions, but the sessions that most intrigued me were Google Docs for beginners and Put Edmodo to Work for your classroom. The Google Docs programs for beginners from basic to advanced, I learned to create a document in Google Docs, title it, and share it with my colleagues at Bridge Creek, and also share it through the district. I can insert tables, highlight rows and columns for assessment, or taking a survey for selecting a student of the week. I plan to use Google Docs during our parent night to set up a parent group, because as we know, most parents are emailing. And lastly, learning to put Edmodo to work in the classroom was presented by our own Donna Toiber. She was amazing. I gained much insight with this technology device. This is a safe social network site for students. And I've already set up my Edmodo community, which named Wise Third Grade Cougars. Now, just waiting on my class roll. In using Edmodo, I can create assignments, post online quizzes, and share documents with students, integrating Google Docs. Another tool that's useful in Edmodo is blogging, which would also be a great source to update my parents by posting assignments their child has either missed or need to give clarification of what is expected with the assignment. That's the plan for this coming school year, and I'm ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Brochu, is that?
That's all we have at this
Okay,
time.
thank you very much. Next is our public participation session. No one has signed up. However, if there's anyone here who would like to address the board, you have an opportunity to come forth and do so at this time. Thank you very much. Next is our legislative update, our legislative report. Ms. Brill, Dr. Burgess.
We sent out the documents that were provided to us by the Association of School Administrator and Officials, which they do an excellent job. But just to highlight, the Terry will end in 2018. And it is my understanding that even if you enter in 2016, you still will not complete your Terry. That's what I understand when I read it, but I'll clarify that. And then also I know after talking to Brochu with all the vetoes, according to Dr. Brochu, the House overrode the veto today for the school funding, but we'll see what the Senate does tomorrow. So we still do not know where we stand in terms of budget.
Ms. Brill, anything you'd like to add?
No, that's it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from other board members? As always, I want to thank Dr. Burgess and Ms. Brill and Mr. Davis and Sandy Smith for getting the information to us in advance and making us aware of what's happening at the legislature. And as Dr. Burgess indicated, right now they're in the throes of the House meeting and the Senate tomorrow meeting to consider the governor's vetoes and take appropriate action as they deem appropriate. We will find out more about that later as that moves on. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is our facilities report. Dr. Brochu?
Yes, I'd like to call on Jack Carter, Executive Director for our operations.
Before I start, I'd like to say that my daughter is a media specialist in Lexington 5 at Seven Oaks Elementary. She attended that summit. Pretty technology savvy kid to begin with, came home and told me it was the best thing she'd done professionally in her whole 6 months of being a professional. Now, having said that, you have this week's facility report. Our folks are here. I have a couple updates I'd like to give you.
Please do that.
On on R&E, I'll start with there. We did demo the old press box and some of the concrete. We'll demo the rest of it when we get ready to re-pour it. And we expect to start fencing next week. The first part will be to demo all the interior fencing. That'll take a while because all that's in concrete. And then right after that, we'll reinstall the new fencing. The new baseball press box will probably not get here till the end of August, but we've already worked that out with the school. The track, we stopped work on the track for a few days. We ran into some moisture problems. I'm meeting with the competition track folks in the morning to see if we can resolve it. Personally, I think it's because we put in a new field at the same time and we watered the heck out of it. I think we just had some residual water there. At Ridgeview, the asbestos abatement was completed on I call them the old Fort Jackson portables. We were finally cleared today by DHEC to begin demolition. They put a traco out there and basically put it on top, squeeze it down, it explodes, and they haul it off in a dumpster. And that will be probably complete maybe tomorrow afternoon, Thursday at the latest. And as soon as that's done, we'll clean that up and then haul off the 6 portables are there. The track is complete. If you hadn't seen it, it looks great. We also added a new access road from basically the school level that gets us down to the track level, the practice field, and really terminates over where the baseball and softball fields are. The painting of the interior of the school, which was actually scheduled for last year, but we deferred it so that Marty wouldn't have to have his teachers move twice. That'll be complete next week. As you know, we were not happy with the flooring in the new addition. They began tearing out the old flooring to put in the new flooring today. Of course, that's no cost to the district, and depending on how much prep they have to do on that floor, that could be done in the next couple of days as well. Probably, realistically, next week, though. The auxiliary gym floor, that was the last tartan floor in the district, and we hope to start on that in the next couple of days. It'll go pretty fast once we start on it. With that, we'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Ms. Brill.
What about the flickering light problem that's unresolved at Catawba Trail?
I wish I could tell you it was fully resolved. We've had lots of folks out there looking at it. We've changed light bulbs. They've changed all kinds of stuff. It's not completely resolved yet.
It's not the whole school?
It's some places sometime, and other places it's not everywhere. Wherever it is at, it's very irritating. So we're still pushing to get it fixed. It might be lighting controls related. I know that Andy was out there today, pretty frustrated with the whole thing. So.
Thank you, Ms. Brill. Mr. Manning?
Mr. Chairman, 2 questions. One, I see we're changing out copper bus in lieu for aluminum bus. I always thought aluminum was bad for electricity.
All of our electricians and the electrical engineer approved that as a cost savings. They're fine with it.
Okay.
We wouldn't do that without my electricians, who eventually will have to work on the system, giving the thumbs up on it.
The other thing is I think this is a question I've asked in the past, but I want to re-ask again. As we roll out one-to-one, our older schools have enough electricity outlets, plugs, other things to accommodate the one-to-one?
I guess the short answer is we've done a lot of electrical upgrades in our older schools. They should be okay. I'm sure there will be spots we'll have to go in and do something. I really won't know until they start rolling it out.
Do we do an assessment before we roll it out to try to estimate needs based off what we've seen in our other schools?
I defer to Tom on that. Actually, it's probably helping us because we're reducing some of the computer labs, which is taking less draw on the power in the schools.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions or comments from the board? No, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ms. Carter. Next is budget update. Dr. Brochu.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. At this time, I'd like to call on our very new Director of Finance, Shelley Allen, to give a quick update on some things that have happened, and certainly Dr. Burgess alluded to one of those major items coming out of the legislature today.
First of all, I'd like to thank each of you for allowing me the opportunity to serve as the Director of Finance at Richland 2. It is great to give back to a community that's been so good to my family and I, so I appreciate that.
Before you start,
yes.
we know, but share with the public a little bit about your background, just very briefly.
I am a product of Richland 2. I actually went to Windsor until North Springs was built, and I was one of the first folks going through North Springs Elementary. Sure. Then went to E.L. Wright and graduated from Spring Valley High School. So I'm a product of Richland 2. Went to USC, got an accounting degree, and have basically spent most of my career in some way, shape, or form with school district finance. I worked my way up to the CFO at Lexington School District 2, and have also worked as an auditor for school districts. So my heart is very much in the school district arena, and it has been a dream of mine to be in Richland 2. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to be here.
Welcome.
And fortunately for me, Ms. Burgess made my update very, very easy, because my update was basically that at this point, the House reconvened today. And as stated earlier, they did override the veto. So we will be waiting until word comes tomorrow. Hopefully that will go through as well, and then we'll be revisiting the budget at that point in time, and be keeping you posted during that process. So.
Questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much, and welcome.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda will be voting on the executive session items. The chair will entertain a motion on those items.
Mr. Chairman, on the student appeals, I'd like to make a motion for student number 1 that we refer that student back to the IEP team. And on student number 2, we refer that student to Blythewood Academy.
Moved by Dr. Burgess. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Brill. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion on the student readmission requests.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that on the student readmission request that we grant that student readmission for all of those students. I think there were 8.
That's correct.
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Burgess, second by Ms. Brill. Are there any further discussion or comments by the board? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. And motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Next, Chair will entertain a motion on the student admissions request into the district's adult education program.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Dr. Flemming.
Dr. Flemming?
I just move that we allow those that have applied to adult ed
Yes.
to attend.
Thank you, Dr. Flemming. It's been moved by Dr. Flemming and second by Ms. Specter. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Ratification of personnel, Dr. Brochu.
Yes, I will ask that our Chief Human Resource Officer, Roosevelt Garrick, share with you recommendation.
Mr. Jackson, ladies and gentlemen of the board, we have for your consideration 3 pages of professional recommendations, 2 pages of professional releases, 1 page of classified recommendation, 2 pages of classified releases, and 3 pages in-district transfers.
Based upon information, the chair will entertain a motion
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Ms. Brill, second by Ms. Specter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. There being no further items under the executive session, we'll move to new business. No action requested. Magnet and special programs. Dr. Brochu.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like for you to look inside your folder, if you've not already done so, and pull the packet of information, a couple of packets, regarding magnets and special program centers that we have here in Richland School District 2. The information you have before you indicates that we have broken out by level, elementary, middle, and high school levels, those magnet programs and or centers that exist in our district today. We have identified each of those programs by their name, their focus, the site where they are located, the grades that are served, the number of students per grade in each of those programs, selection criteria, as well as program model. In addition to that information, if you will kind of turn that first page on the one that says elementary school magnet program information, and you can turn the page and you'll see magnet applicants for the 2012-2013 school year. You will see the totals for those that applied for each magnet, those that were approved for that magnet. Some of those, as you know, were lottery-based, and others perhaps had different kind of criteria associated with selection. You also should see those that, when it says active, those are students that applied for up to 3 different magnet programs and may not have been approved for the one next to that line where they are listed, but they possibly could have been approved for other magnets. Those that say not accepted only applied for that particular program and did not get in. And those that chose to withdraw from the application process before the selection was made is the final column that you see on that document. Per the request of some of our board members, we have pulled together some, please understand, very rough numbers as to the cost of replicating 2 of our existing magnets that perhaps we have gotten a great deal of interest in, and if we were to replicate, more students would have opportunity to be served. With that, you have that information on a separate set of pages, and if you'll look at that for a moment, you will see that we kind of broke that out into 2 ways. The one with the staffing, you will see an initial phase for implementation, and you'll also see the full implementation amount. I know when some of these magnets began, they started with a phase 1 implementation with the idea that they would grow to full implementation. And as a result, we gave you both of those sets of numbers for each of those magnets to consider. We also wanted to share with you just a brief synopsis of facilities. And I will tell you that as we look at one facility, for example, we have some existing classroom space, and the cost would be actually nothing in order to place that program there. Another way we'd have to move, as we did initially for one of our programs, moving forward with some mobile units, or learning cottages as we like to affectionately call them. And we would place those there with all of the kinds of infrastructure necessary, sidewalks, and certainly to have the hookups for sewer and power and technology and so forth. But you have that in a memorandum from Mr. Carter to kind of take a look at that. Again, these are very rough numbers. We wanted to get those to you as quickly as possible. I know when we were talking earlier, we were looking at some of those kinds of things that we would like to do, some of the requests that we've had financially from board members over a period of time. And if we get the kind of influx of money that we're hoping for from the state, certainly we'd like to consider these in the very near future.
Questions or comments from the board? Dr. Flemming?
The cost on the FTEs, that's really not an additional cost, is it, Dr. Brochu? Because we'd be serving those students anyway.
That is correct. And I will say this, though, and Mr. Garrick, I think, will back me up on this. Students don't move necessarily in perfect groups of 19 or 20. So you may have an offset. You're right, that if you have a notion that faculty members and staff follow where students are.
Understand, but don't we actually have a larger class sizes for, like the Center for Knowledge than we do as a normal class size? I mean, we actually put more students in the classroom on purpose.
At CFK.
At a CFK and something like that. So it would be a pretty good, I mean, what I'd say is it'd be a fairly good representation of one-for-one teaching. I was just wondering.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you thought we would take them from all, one school here and there, but no.
If you got 22 in a classroom,
that's it.
Teachers doing 22.
That is correct.
Students, so the real cost in the CFK was the startup and the placing the portables or the cottages. I'm sorry, the cottages at the site to start with.
Yeah, that is correct.
Dr. Brochu,
yes,
the window of time from initial phasing in to the full implementation is a couple of years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
And I believe as we have done that in the past, from the research we have found thus far, some of these were begun quite a number of years ago. In the CFK model, I believe it started with a K2 experience and then grew to the 3-5 and then actually doubled the actual program for the needs of the demand.
Whereas in the TLC, though, it would be, I would imagine, the next year, I'm guessing.
That could absolutely happen.
Initial.
Yes, sir.
Other questions or comments from the board?
Dr. Brochu.
Ms. Manning?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. That I see, based off the numbers that you've given us, the CFK program looks like it had the most applicants and the most that were not accepted in those numbers. But when I look at middle school, it looks like by far law has more who applied and did not get in than TLC.
And that is very true. As we looked at the numbers, that actually did happen. And I confirmed that today with Dawn McLeod.
Well, you've got about 50 more in law, but you've got than TLC, but you've got about 30 more approved in law than TLC. So ratio-wise, it looks like there's a wider percentage of those not getting in to TLC.
Right.
I'm not reading the number correctly.
Well, I was also looking at the number not accepted in law who applied just to law. You had 105. So I guess I was just looking at, what the reasoning was for TLC versus law. I mean, there may be soft issues here.
That was a request from the board to review that.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Other questions or comments from the board? Dr. Burgess?
Well, bottom line is the magnets are very popular and a lot of applicants. One of the things I noticed here, Dr. Brochu, is space. Do we have space to really replicate these magnets? For example,
we would begin just as we did, for example, with CFK. It began with mobile units, and I believe Jack Carter and I worked on that, and I think that we have enough mobile units where we could actually begin that program. Okay. And we do have space on the campus of Muller Road. Actually was built with that in mind, a future center. And so that, I believe, was in the early phase planning, if I'm not mistaken, master
Muller
plan.
Road was master planned to have a center eventually, so that counts why you have the very long loop road in front of there, so we went ahead and put in that road with the anticipation that in the future we would put a center on there.
Okay.
There's actually room to put the portables between where the footprint of the permanent building would be and where the portables would go, and still have room between that and Muller. And that way, in the future, we wouldn't have to, if we decide to build a permanent facility out there, we wouldn't have to move the portables to build a facility. We've unfortunately had to do that before, so we try to anticipate that. And we do have sufficient portables. I don't want to speak for Fred, but Fred and I have been through the numbers, and we do have sufficient portables available.
In the
That's
case
certainly-
of the, the middle school TLC, at Longleaf, we have some space.
Yeah, the capacity of Longleaf programmatically is 1050. I think their numbers are somewhere in the low 600s. Currently, TLC uses 12 permanent classrooms, and then, of course, they go to other classrooms for certain subjects. So there would be capacity at Longleaf today to put them in a classroom. You'd need basically 12 classrooms and a space for a lead teacher. So there should be more than enough capacity there with their current population. Fred and I have even talked about how does the growth look. It doesn't look like that would be a problem in the near term.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple more questions.
Sure, by all
Dr. Brochu, I just want to clarify, because I see the date on here, 2012-13, but we can't start that this coming year. Is that correct?
No, we just wanted to give you this as where we are right now.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were good there.
I wanted to say that these are the numbers that would total salaries in today's pay schedule. So that's why the date is on there.
I got you. Okay. Just a couple other questions. Is this something that, and I know the board sort of requested this, but I guess visioning going forward that we would look at expanding either other programs. I know like STEMs is an area that we're hearing a lot about, colleges and workforce saying we need more of that. Is this something we would expand?
Yes, and I will tell you that STEMs probably is our most popular at the elementary level today, and really in what I would say a P20 environment. From preschool through the 20th year of school, STEMs is probably the highest profile programming right now that we are seeing and hearing.
And we can do this and still maintain the same commitment to current programs and magnets in the school. I want to make sure we're not draining
Absolutely.
Resources from one to accommodate.
That is correct. And we are constantly reviewing the effectiveness of those magnets. If we have lots of interest in one and not much in another, what is it that's causing that to occur? It's like any kind of program that you would have, whether it's a magnet or any other special entity or program in your district. You constantly have to look and review what is causing folks to want to take certain kinds of programmatic learning and not others.
So there's the potential that some of the current magnets that we have could actually morph if they're not, current magnets may not be performing or have the student knowledge.
That could happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could. You could turn that and take it to a different level.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to make sure we don't, the ones that may need some help, that we're looking at both ends, not only the ones that we need to expand, but the ones that may need some rework.
That is correct.
Good question. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, I have
Yes,
a
Ms. Specter.
question. So if we decided to expand on STEMs, is that going to be in the south end and the north end part of the district? Or are we, wherever the numbers are, is where we're going to put the program?
I think that's a conversation that we would have to have moving forward. What makes sense?
And we're still going to maintain the same amount of students in each one of those programs, no matter where we put it in the district, right?
That is currently the design. That's right.
Now, is this information also going on the website, or, because we didn't get any slides on it?
Right. No, this was a request from board members, and I was delivering the request.
I guess the reason I'm asking, because we're having a public session, and the public's not knowing really what we're talking about here.
Yeah. This obviously was information that was requested by the board, and so we wanted to give it to the board first.
And I think to continue the conversation, particularly as Mr. Manning has raised a very important issue regarding a magnet stem that was not included, I think we need to take a closer look at whether or not these are the two most appropriate ones.
That's right.
After having a look at the numbers, and this is the first time I've seen it, I'm more inclined to reconsider, because the request for the TLC came specifically from me, to reconsider that one and consider one like STEM in addition to the one that Dr. Flemming. So I think the conversation needs to continue before we decide on which ones we're going to actually move forward with.
That's right.
Other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I had one
Dr.
more.
Burgess.
Dr. Brochu, on some of these pages underneath the table where you have magnet applicants,
Yes.
so students may not be a qualified applicant. That means for that particular magnet, but they could qualify for another. Is that what that means?
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what that means. We have some that are lottery focused or based, and so any student can make application. In the table, if you look, that describes each of the magnets as the particularly the middle and high school magnet program information sheets, you will see selection criteria, lottery, and then the selective means that there are selective pieces of information that are necessary in order for a student to qualify. For example, it may be some test score data, it could be writing samples, teacher recommendations, interviews, application process, auditions in some cases, etc. So all that would play in.
But where it says active, that just means that they may not have been in that, accepted into that magnet, but another one based on criteria.
That is absolutely correct.
Mr. Chairman,
That's Burgess.
in the spirit of transparency
Sure.
and following up on Ms. Specter, do we post magnet application in terms of how many applied? And do we ever give the public that information, or is that public information that we've shared in the past? I don't really recall. I know that we've done that in some of the flyers and brochures.
I'm not familiar with seeing that over the years, so I can only speak for.
I think the only thing I've seen over the years is the total number of applicants. That's usually somewhere,
Right.
you know, it's in the website, but
Right, well, that's what I mean.
not specifically breakdowns. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Well, might be
Ken,
interesting.
am I right, sort of, on that? I mean, over the years.
Yes, I believe that's correct. I think there could potentially be an issue with some type of breach of confidentiality. I mean, certain things would be public and certain things wouldn't, but we certainly could look at
Well, you wouldn't post student information.
That's
but,
right.
But you would post, like, you know, how many applicants applied for the magnets and how many were accepted, and, you know, but I know we've done that in the past. That way people have an idea.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation based off Ms. Specter's request, because I do agree with her that we've been presented with this information in public, and if there's any information that may need to be redacted from this for public, but I think we need to make the documents available to the public in the same way that we've been presented.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
is
Specter.
it possible that we could go ahead and target a date so we can have the next discussion concerning this, so we can stay on track and make sure it's been discussed?
Let's make sure when we get to the session that talks about the next board agenda item, let's make a recommendation added to that. Would that be okay, Ms. Specter, if you make a note of that, and we do that when we get to the end? Thank you very much. Other questions or comments from the board?
No, but thank you for the report.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to say I think this is an important topic for the district, and I'm happy to see us as a board take this up. I think it's something that's been kind of lingering out there, you know, and normally, that's my understanding in the past, we've, you know, added a magnet once every year, every couple years, and I think I'm happy to see this topic resurface, not only in the aspect of adding to our magnets or growing them, but also, as I said, looking at all of our magnets to make sure if we have any that are underperforming or don't have the numbers, that we're not putting resources into something that's not giving us the biggest bang for our buck with our students, and look at either transitioning those to other programs that are more currently appropriate, like STEMs or other things. And so I think it's very appropriate that we're having this discussion, and early enough to implement so that we can have that prepared going into the following school year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manning. Other comments, questions, or concerns from the board? Thank you very much. Next, the report on the midwinter break data. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, we have Mr. Jeff Potts who will present that information at this time.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, tonight I'm prepared to bring forward to you the information about the midwinter break. There are a couple major questions that really came to my mind when I thought about the midwinter break. Most of them had revolved around what kind of impact did the midwinter break have on, for example, student and teacher attendance, student discipline, student achievement, and then really in general, what kind of impact did it have on the lives of our teachers, to our parents, and also our students. A couple measures of potential impact that I want to look at, we're going to look at together. Some of those dealing with students, of course, attendance, discipline, and grade level information are going to be information that's going to come from PowerSchool. There's also going to be survey information. It's going to help us understand a little more about students. Teachers, we're going to have information regarding attendance, which is ALIO data, also survey information, and from parents, some satisfaction information. One of the things I want to caution us about tonight is that we're going to look at comparisons for some of this data from one year to the next, and just because there are differences does not necessarily imply that there is causality in regards to the midwinter break. So make sure we consider these as we're looking forward.
Jeff, but before we move on, since you touched on the subject, I was just curious as to why we looked at 1 year prior to this year versus maybe a 2 or 3 year prior, so we can, sort of, because those trends, I mean, 1 year doesn't really mean a whole lot.
The biggest reason is because we switched from our student information system, which is SASE, to PowerSchool, and the information that we can gather from SASE doesn't pull out as nicely as it does from PowerSchool. We also have teacher attendance information, which being pulled out of our old system as compared to ALIO might be really cumbersome. And just to give you an idea of the number of data elements we're talking about with student attendance alone, we're probably talking in the realm of 80 million rows of data. When you start talking about 26,000 students times 180 days, times 2 years, times perhaps 8 levels or 8 periods per day with these students, it starts adding up really quick. And not only that, we're talking about rows of information, and we need columns of information too. So we're talking a massive amount of information that we're trying to pull together in just the attendance piece. Kind of the same thing with the teacher attendance, though not nearly as big, and student discipline isn't really that huge and cumbersome, but still it represents a lot of information, and trying to add in another data system on top of that, I think really would have left me a little busy. So that's really the reason why I chose the 2010-11 versus 2011-12. So we can gather that, but I would think the resources available to try to pull that information might be not necessarily worth it.
Right. Well, I think you explained it well, and I appreciate you explaining that just so I know, why, because it is hard to tell 1 year to the
right.
next. But like you said, the difficulty of doing that for you to spend who knows how long. I'm sure you have more important data to get to our teachers for success in the classroom. So
perhaps.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? When you say that about the teachers, with the data from the students, are you looking at it the same way?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Okay, you were just making reference to so much data to look for the teachers. Are we taking that same, I don't want to use the word attitude, when we're trying to compare back to the students?
If you're talking about the survey information, basically yes. The information about attendance, the attendance comes out differently than it does in the student information system versus the teacher information, but in general we're comparing the exact same thing.
See, Jeff.
First, I'd like to look at differences in student absences between the 2 years. If student attendance was impacted by the midwinter break, I would assume that the impact would be most noted notable with the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after the midwinter break. The points on this scatter plot really represent the number of students that had an unexcused absence during the 2 weeks period, 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after the midwinter break this year, and also a comparison of the same basic information from the previous year. That is the same time period. In general, like I said, causality, we don't want to really jump to conclusions, but from this, can we say that there was necessarily a decrease this year in student attendance? You wouldn't say that. In fact, I'm sorry, you would say that there would likely a decrease. You wouldn't say that we had some sort of an issue with more students being out over that time period. Again, we're comparing a 4-week period versus a 5-week period, but in the exact same time frame, we're looking at averages. Also, looking at the number of discipline incidents over that same time period, once again, I would suspect that if students' discipline incidents were impacted by the midwinter break, once again, I would assume that we would likely be able to see the impact the 2 weeks prior and the 2 weeks after the midwinter break. From this, once again, you can kind of, I would think that we could draw a conclusion perhaps that there are less student discipline incidences this year than there were last year, the previous year, over that time period. And you can especially notice this the beginning of the week immediately after the midwinter break. Again, these are recorded discipline incidences over that period of time. Later on, I think in one of the surveys, teachers discussed that they weren't sure whether or not students were a little more rambunctious before or after. I think this kind of helps us determine just how big of an impact that really was. One of the difficult things about the midwinter break is trying to determine how student achievement really plays a part in this. I'd like to caution us to make sure that, when looking at attributing differences in standardized test scores as related to the midwinter break, to me it seems a little improper to be able to do that. However, I wanted to be able to give you some information to try to determine whether or not students had some effect in terms of their achievement. And what I did is I averaged in students' quarterly grades at every subject level and grade level. That is, for example, in this chart, elementary versus language arts. I did this for middle school and high school for language arts and social studies and math. And in general, I'd say that if there was an impact on the midwinter break on third quarter grades, we would see that in some of these different charts. This is an example, but I'll let you know that I didn't find any examples where we see any major impact, that is major improvement or decline in the third quarter grades when looking at an average for each subject and grade level.
Because we've had a couple challenges in the middle school math, would you go back and look at that for me, if you will, and tell me particularly, I think it's either 6th grade or 7th grade math, where on pass we were struggling a bit with the state average, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff.
In terms of the quarterly grades?
Yes, sir.
I've got it overall for middle school right in front of me, and in comparison to the year before, I don't see any impact. I'll be happy to send over this, kind of the full summary of this, so you can take a look at that, and I'd be happy to do it by grade level as well.
I'm just specifically interested in the math because I know that's a challenge for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Ms. Specter?
Can I ask you one question? You made the comment that you actually compared it to the subjects of the grades, right?
I did it by level, as an elementary level as a whole. That would be just grades 3 through 5, and then 6 through 8, and then at the high school level for each subject.
But you didn't add in like the MAP scores, the PASS scores, or the AP scores?
No, and the reason I didn't, once again, is I really kind of feel that even if we did see changes at those, I think it would be hard to make the justification that the midwinter break was the reason that scores either improved or went down. I think that might be a bit of a stretch. There's hundreds, thousands of other factors that go into some of that, and I think in this environment, which is just post hoc, I think that'd be hard to do. If we set up a real research study, that might be easier to pull out at a later time. But
I think that's really important to know, because you're not really taking it back far enough for me to even prove to me that it was because of the midwinter break. We only had it in place 1 year.
Right.
And then you're not going all the way back with the data. I mean, I don't see how we have true figures if we're not calculating everything we do within the schools during that year.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Dr. Flemming.
I know it's difficult because we don't have a trend. We only did it 1 year, so it's pretty, I mean, so you can compare 1 year to 1 year because we don't have any more data anyway from the winter break. I think what some people were worried about was that actually kids would lose stuff, lose information. So you could actually do the winter break, you could do spring break just as well, in my opinion, as you could winter. I mean, you could find out if during a week's time that the kids, lose something in the translation. You don't have to use just winter break. So, and then I don't see any difference between having a long weekend when you're off Friday and Monday versus having the week off the next week. There's not any more days really. So, but anyway, I understand how it's difficult to relate because we only have 1 year data on winter break. We decided not to do it. We won't have it again unless we change it over. So.
Mr. Chair, I think some of
Thank you, Dr. Flemming. Ms. Manning.
Some of the data that I'd like to see also is AP scores, because I think our AP teachers are losing a week of critical time there. Mm-hmm. And I agree with Dr. Flemming. It's hard to trend either forward or back when you only have 1 year data. But just one of the subjective things I've sort of seen from this is it looks to me like a lot of the benefit of this boils down to like a quality of life kind of issue. I think if you look at a lot of the slides that you've presented, the reasons that staff, students, and parents want that week is a quality of life issue, that they can take vacation, they get an extra break to recoup, catch up on work, and based off the data that you've shown, I mean, I didn't see yearly statistics as to overall discipline for the year. Did we increase or decrease for the year? I know that 1 week's hard to say, and it could be.
The discipline really didn't change from 1 year to the next. I think we had within 1,500 discipline incidents total as a difference for the whole year. When you think of 180 days, we're talking 10, 15 discipline incidents per day.
So we didn't slide forward a great deal. We didn't slide backward a great deal. It's a quality of life issue. Now, the other thing that I question with the survey is, where was the survey published and what demographic of the district do we get responses from? Because I think if you look at, as our chair stated a number of times, the level of poverty in our district is increasing. With that in mind, are our lower socioeconomic families going to respond to these surveys in the same magnitude that maybe some of our upper socioeconomics? So I think the respondents to the survey and the demographics and the numbers that we hit in the district makes a big difference to me as to how much regard I put into the subjective answers that we got back. Do you have any detail on that?
We had this year, just to let you know, for the parent survey, we had through Mr. Ken Blackstone's office, we sent out 16,500 EdConnect phone messages that connected through. We sent out 25,000 emails to parents within the district that have registered email addresses. And we had a result of over, I think, 4,100 parents respond to the survey. That may not sound like a huge percentage when we're thinking about 26,000 or 40,000 parents, somewhere in that range. But at the same time, it's the largest number of responses we've ever had from parents within the district. So even though we may say that that probably doesn't reflect, I think as a whole, even though we don't gather information about free and reduced lunch status for children of parents, we're not asking parents to identify what type of gender of students that they have or ethnicity of students that they have within the schools. At the same time, I think 4,000 parents you can't necessarily ignore either. So as you're saying, it's not a huge, may not be a huge number in terms of our total population or total sample that we could have, but it is the largest we've ever had.
I think in just my experience, I'm just going to take a raw guess that probably the majority of respondents are upper quartile of income, accessibility to computers, or working one job, so they have more time to sit down and look at this versus somebody who's maybe, working two jobs, mom's, working at night, dad's home in the day, whatever it may be. I think the other thing is that if we do move forward with the midwinter break, I would hope that we as a district look at this and make sure that we present it for what it is as a quality of life issue, so that we address it for that and be very careful about, giving statistics on either improvement of scores or discipline difference or other things unless we have the data to back that up. And from what I've seen here and the statements you've given me, I question, do we have the, raw data to say that we improved? But quality of life is important and something that we should consider and look at. So, and that's just my comments as an individual, but that's just what I'm seeing from what we've been presented with.
Thank you, Mr. Manning.
Like me to continue? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Ms.
Dr.
Brill, did you have some questions? Because I wanted to ask something.
I was just going to say that it looked like the staff was resoundingly in favor of it, and it looked like the parents were not as much. And so the issue for parents is childcare.
Yeah, and especially if you look at, try to find that specific slide. There is a parent slide where it shows parents who have younger children within the district are less likely to like having the midwinter break than parents of older students, middle school.
And because
students,
it's not a national holiday or not anything that's designated, parents have to take off from work, is my understanding from talking to folks, and that is a real hardship for people.
We had, I think, over 9,000 responses, total responses from the parents in terms of the open item questions. And when parents did not like or some of the reasons against were, the biggest one was finding childcare for their children. With the very last comment that we threw in, we don't ski, we work. So there is kind of a divergence of populations that we have where some people are very much for the midwinter break. And according to the survey, we have a large percentage of parents, but we had a larger percentage of staff members and students than we did parents within the survey.
Dr. Burgess?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that the data, the test scores are important. We may not be able to infer causality or a direct relationship, but I think that was one of the major concerns of school board members, administrators, teachers, and students and parents. So I think we need that information. I would request, if you don't mind, these scatter plots are interesting to look at, but they're visually very difficult to read. So could you please give us a graph, like a bar graph, when you trend data and show us so that we can look? And then also, would you increase the length of time? Because I just don't think 2 weeks is enough to make an assessment in terms of whether it was meaningful or useful or not useful. And then I want to clarify, would you go back to the slide where it said elementary LA? Keep going.
That one?
Yeah. See where it says 90.9 Q1?
Yes.
That's reflection of the average quarterly grades, and you lumped grades 3, 4, and 5 together.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I would request that those be separated because as students, even in 6, 7, and 8, you put those together, correct?
Yes.
And then high school, 9, 10, 11, 12. I just think there's so much difference in those grades and those grade levels in terms of where they are in their learning and their level of comprehension. I just think you just can't lump all that in a sample. From a research point of view, I just don't think that makes sense to do that.
At the same time, we can't go on a fishing expedition for all the different types of
I understand that, but
it.
you can't lump 9th graders and 12th graders together in terms of their characteristics and look at grades because they're so different socially, physically, even cognitively, they're different. So I would request that you separate those out if we get data to look at that in the future.
And Jeff, didn't you say you had it separate?
Yes.
Yeah,
This
you
data
did?
is
I
already
didn't-
separated out.
Yeah.
Just for the purposes of
provide it to
this.
us.
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this is all I saw, so
Yeah.
I didn't understand that, okay.
When I asked about the middle school math,
Okay.
and he indicated that.
Just for
Right.
the purposes of this, I tried to summarize it.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine, I just didn't see
I
it.
think if you send that to us, so that would be helpful.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess.
That was kind of it.
No, but that's fine, Jeff.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Manning.
a couple comments. One, I just want to be careful. I don't think we as a board ever on a fishing expedition, and I just want to be careful with how we state that. You know, we're trying to look at the data in the best way we know how to make educated decisions, and I know you were kind of on the spot, but I just want to be careful with that. The other thing is that I've said this in the last time we talked about it, I am much more amenable to this week if we have remediation for students that need remediation and facilities to help accommodate some of our working parents that may not have childcare. I think if we can use this week to help improve our students that need the most help and benefit them in that way, I would be much more, I think it would just be a better opportunity to increase our scores, to provide that opportunity for our students that need it the most, and still accommodate the parents that want that week for, quality of life vacation, and our staff that may need that as well. And in my mind, that would be the best use of that week, and I would be much more willing to look at that in that manner.
And I think that's a good point, Ms. Manning, probably one that should be directed to Dr. Brochu and Ms. Millette, as opposed to our data guy. But your point's well made.
Thank you.
And I'd like to address that.
Certainly.
We absolutely did build partnerships and have some of those programs open during the midwinter break this year. So those did exist, and we had a number of people take advantage of them.
So we did have remediation during that week.
We had
I
a
just-
number of
that's
camps, different camps, not only on our campuses, but throughout the community as well.
Well, the camps that I saw had costs associated with them. And so, I mean, I do remember seeing that we had some of those available. I think what I'm looking for is more tutoring opportunities and things that if we can get grants or other businesses to work with us to either reduce or eliminate the cost depending on need for students that need that remediation or parents that need help in a sliding scale. If we continue to build out those partnerships in a bigger scale than what I remember seeing the last time, again, I'm willing to entertain that. But I do remember seeing that we did have some
Yes, sir.
partnerships. I just think we need to look at exactly what those are and the scale of them.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Great observation. Anything else from the board? Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much. Yes, sir, Jeff, you have one?
There was one other
Yes,
piece
sir.
that I wanted to share with you. I had heard initially after the midwinter break that there was parents that didn't know about the midwinter break, and that was another additional question that was within it. How did you learn about the midwinter break? And there was about somewhere between 1% and 2% of the parents that had responded said that they had not heard of it. Overwhelmingly, we had a lot of parents indicate there were multiple methods that they had heard about it, from the calendar to the website, word of mouth, teacher and school newsletters, individual school websites. So overwhelmingly, the majority of parents within the district, this wasn't a surprise to them. So, and those are just some of the methods that they had heard about it through.
Thank you very much. Dr. Flemming.
One last comment. The first year, 85% of the staff liked it. About 84% of the students liked this break, and even 63% of the parents did. Now, I know that you may argue on if that's valid or not, but for the first time, I don't think those are bad numbers. Now, you can talk about all you want to. I mean, I think if years, as time went on, and this was part of your schedule, these numbers would vastly improve. But again, teaching time, James, I don't think it's any difference. I mean, it shouldn't be any less days of teaching before the AP exams this way. It should not be any less days teaching, okay? I think we've had this worked out pretty good. 85% of the staff I mean, and the students, it's 80, I mean, I just want to, that's my comment. I think it went over very well for the first time we ever tried it. And it's just, I'm just disappointed we didn't at least try it one more time. Get some more statistics too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flemming. Thank you, Ms. Potts. Appreciate it very much. Next on our agenda will be the agenda items for our next board meeting, which will be August 14th. Dr. Brochu.
Yes, we have our budget update, a proposed revision to policy JICJ, which is use of electronic communication devices in school, and our data report, our data snapshot.
Thank you. Are there any other items that the board members would like to have added to our next board meeting or a future board meeting?
Mr. Chair, I would
Ms.
like
Specter.
to add to, I don't really say the next board meeting, but one, you can decide on when, to discuss more about the elementary school magnet programs.
Thank you, Ms. Specter. Other items from the board members?
Mr. Chairman, do we
Dr.
need
Burgess?
to vote on the budget next meeting?
We would
Well,
think that
to
we
be
would, but
presented.
we don't want to be presumptuous until we get final
Okay.
action at the state level,
Okay.
I would believe.
And then also, I'd like a report from Dr. McDaniel on how the application process went in terms of numbers at the high school. Remember with the rezoning issue, you know, how did that fall out? Or in other words, is one school top heavy, one school not? I'd like some sort of preliminary report. I know they can't give us the final numbers, but just kind of a heads up as to where we are, especially with that rezoning that we went through last year at the high school is what I'm talking about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Manning?
something that I've been asking for, and I don't believe we've gotten, is a report on the transportation for our students, our bus transportation. I think we were going to get a report on that. Did we get that, Jack?
Board brief.
Board brief.
That was the board brief? Okay, can you, Georgette, tell me when that was, and or send it to me again? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Jack.
Manning. Other agenda items, requests from the board? Hearing none, thank you very much. We now are in our second public participation session. Again, because no one signed up, we want to give opportunity to anyone who's here, who's present, who would like to speak to the board. If there's anyone who would like to address the board, feel free to do so. Come up and state your name, your address. As you're coming, I want to make you aware that you have 3 minutes to share your comments with the board.
My name is Dawn Muscoven. My address is 2928 Alpine Road. I would like to thank you, Mr. Jackson, for allowing me to speak. Some of you guys might know me by name, others might know me by face. I've helped pass out water to get you elected. And I used to work for the school district as a security officer, and I was demoted down from being a security officer to being a librarian because I complained about some issues that were going on in security. A lot of things happened in security after that issue, and things were changed around and stuff of that nature. And then when I went to from security to being a librarian, I lost a tremendous amount of money, and my quality of living changed tremendously. I still continued to try to work for the school district because I have great respect for the school district, and I was hoping I could probably try to fit in going to school so that I could get a better job with the school district or return to security. Once I realized I wasn't prepared yet for school to try to I tried to go back to security, and it was pretty much a block. I asked, talked to the gentleman that was over security. I had a meeting with him out on the Richland Northeast of soccer field, just trying to get back. The reasons for me being let go, well, they asked me to resign, but I told them they would have to fire me because I didn't know if I could get a job immediately. As you can see, I took the first job I could get because I have kids to support. The reasons I was terminated were to be really ridiculous, I feel, because they were situations of letting kids behind the circulation desk. There's no way you can keep kids away from a circulation desk, around an entire circulation desk of a cyber center. There's no way you can sit permanently at a circulation desk. You have to be able to go and do other things. And just a number of things that were just minuscule items, I felt, and I felt like I was terminated due to the stuff that had happened from security. And that's why I just wanted to come and let you guys know, because I've been a faithful person to the school district. My family all has come to the school district. I've had 2 kids graduate from the school district. And I've decided, because of losing my child with Blythewood, that I would not allow my son to return back to the school district. I'm going to homeschool him, and I'm going to hopefully move from this district, because I've been I felt like I was so truly done wrong. This was a district that helped me out tremendously when I was put in foster care when I was younger, and I wanted to come back. When I came back to Columbia, that's my main goal, was to come and work for this school district. Chief Props gave me that opportunity to work in security, and I took great pride in my schools. And I loved Richland Northeast. I walked Richland Northeast even when I wasn't supposed to be on duty and I wasn't getting paid. I would still go up there and take care of things because I care so much about this school district. And I just wanted to come and let you guys know of my situation.
I want to thank you very much for that. And although we don't respond in public session, we're certainly going to ask the superintendent and our director of HR to get a report on this, on your particular case, and inform the board of your specific situation so that we can respond appropriately once we hear from them. I assure you we will do that. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before the board? Please come up and state your name and your address, please.
That's a tough act to follow. Stevie Johnson, 201 Cricket Hill. I had about 6 things I'm going to send via email because this isn't the right time, but there were 2 things tonight that I wanted to bring to your attention. When I go online, I print out every board report and I read every report and attachment that's with it. I put a lot of attention into it. I love the legislative report this time. There was oodles of information. The verbal presentation, though, that was made on the magnet programs and the special reports did not exist ahead of time. The audience was completely left out of the process because during that verbal presentation, there was no mention of the school or the program, meaning the audience was kept out of the process for nearly 15 minutes. It was only through sheer listening skills through the comments made by the board that I ascertained that the Center for Knowledge and TLC were probably the programs that were being discussed. If this information was last minute, which I'm assuming it was to the board, and because we didn't have slides, the board received packets. There should have been packets for the public to read and peruse. I could have done that in the 20 minutes before. I could have done it now when I taken. So I'd like to request that that packet be available to the public. That's also part of the transparency which we've stressed so much. And then obviously, while I don't have the data in front of me, I did want to make an interesting observation with regards to the magnet programs. And that is, I heard that you can apply to multiple programs, and I didn't know that because by the time my kids were applying, it was in high school. And in Spring Valley, they had an interesting choice. You apply to one program, both either Explorations or the Discovery program, and of course those programs are very different. If you were a match for one, you wouldn't have been a match for the other, and I had great respect that they took that position, that you zeroed in on what was a match, and you didn't sort of play the odds and go, here, I hope I get into one of these magnet programs, that you made a really thoughtful choice, the parents and the students. And I loved that. And of course, that may change the numbers in terms of when you're looking at high school for the number of kids that applied and didn't make it or did. And in fact, I do know that the Discovery students do hear each year the number of kids that have applied. And it's really quite an honor to be accepted into the Discovery program when you know what the competition is and that they're taking 40 kids. And then my last little thing was, when I read with great interest the midwinter and break data, I did feel that the unexcused absences and the discipline had such a small little difference in error that it probably wasn't of any real consequence. And I was delighted to hear the term quality of life being discussed. I actually know a mom who was in favor. I'm sort of iffy on that, but my kids were in high school, so it was different. But I know a mom who was so in favor of her school trip that she actually replied to the survey at least 3 times. So it tickled me when we had such great response that perhaps we did have a lot of favorable parents looking for ski trips, and they did that. But again, I really do want to see transparency, and me as a public person who follows the school district, I'd like to have access to the documents. And if it is for public discussion, then it is for public discussion. And as I understand reading the executive session rules, it should be made available to us, and I'll look forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other persons would like to speak to the board? If not, thank you very much. At this time, we'll have board and superintendent comments. We'll start with Dr. Flemming.
Just glad to see you tonight. I can't believe we have as many people here tonight. It's been a good discussion.
Yes.
You're right, Stevie. You can have mine. Okay. When you leave. But I think that we're in a very important time of our district. We're still having tremendous growth considering what everyone else in this district, in this area is experiencing. And we have to deal with that. We have developed a monster called choice in this district.
Yes.
I mean, we have done that. So we're going to have to look into expanding that because it's just so many applications, as you'll see. And it will be on the website, too, so for that information. But I just want to thank the board for the honest discussion. And Jeff, you had a tremendously hard, difficult situation. You had to draw lines here and there on how to do this, and I appreciate your report.
Thank you, Dr. Flemming. Dr. Burgess?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank y'all for the reports. I thought they were great. I did want to acknowledge, and excuse me if I get it wrong, but it's the Association of Office Professionals. Is that correct? They had National Association, but our state group won first place in the nation in terms of their newsletter. So I wanted to acknowledge y'all in your way and the district. So I just wanted to let y'all know that they do a super job. So thank you, and I hope y'all had a good time at your national meeting. I just want to let y'all know, hot off the press, in terms of the vetoes, I'll just mention a few. Teacher salary supplements support was overridden. The Education Oversight Committee operating budget was overridden, of course. And the School Improvement Council funding was overridden. There are others, but those are probably the main ones that we're looking at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. Ms. Specter?
No comments.
Thank you, Ms. Specter. Ms. Brill?
Thank you, Mr. Potts. I think you did a great job, and welcome. What's your name again? Shelley, welcome. We're glad you're here and glad you're a product of Richland too. And that's it. Thank you for a good meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Brill. Mr. Manning?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Jeff, I'm sorry I didn't mean to kill the messenger there. I do appreciate you bringing that message to us, and you have a very important job in the district, and so I appreciate what you do, and now you split your time as a father with us here in the district as well. Shelley, glad you're here. We definitely welcome your expertise. As a graduate of Lexington too, I can appreciate your experience from there as well. So, I do think that the choice discussions are so appropriate when you look across the state. Mr. Jackson, myself, and the superintendent attended some of the discussions on choice that are being presented at the state level. And I can tell you that we are light years ahead of many of the other districts in our choice options. And that's a key piece, as Bill stated, to what's allowing our district to continue to grow and be such a viable district. And so I'm excited as we look at that and where that takes us. And definitely interested to see where this midwinter break ends up. I think we still have a lot of discussion before we get anywhere on that. But anyways, thank you, fellow board members. It is nice to be able to have lively discussions and in a professional manner, and I think that's what makes our board successful. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Also, I want to welcome you, Shelley. Very happy to have you, and it's so refreshing to see that Richland too can also attract persons from other school districts as opposed to sending them all of our best. So welcome, and we're excited to have you. I want to remind everyone of our summer school graduation that's going to be coming up on this Thursday night at Spring Valley High School, and it's a very important graduation for a number of students who did not quite get it and did not quite make it in the spring, but persevered and now coming out in the end of the summer. And we certainly are. I'm as excited for them as I am for any graduate of our school district, and so we look forward to seeing all. I look forward to seeing all the board members there. I had the pleasure of attending part of the Midland Summit. I was extremely impressed as I was there and listened to one of the keynote speakers, and I can assure you that summit was as well done as any national conference that I've ever attended. It was absolutely outstanding, and to have other districts come into our district and be there to be a part of an actual hands-on learning environment and learning experience, I think speaks volumes not only about the nature of the beast in terms of the new technology, but also volumes about where we are in moving ahead and being ahead of the game in trying to ensure that we are proactive and not reactive to this piece of tool, and we use it to our advantage. I absolutely agree. I think the conversation regarding our magnet schools and our magnet efforts and trying to ensure that choice is available, as I remember saying several years ago, I always want to make sure that we have choice and not just chance in our district. And so for far too many students, it's been a chance and not a choice that they've had. And so I think we need to continue to have that conversation and that discussion, not just limiting it to just CFK and TLC, but as I said here tonight, open it up now to include STEMs and other areas that we recognize based upon the numbers that we saw, that there is a need, and not only a need, but a tremendous interest. I want to echo what you said also, Dr. Burgess. I look forward to seeing the updated report on the rezoning and how those numbers shake out so that we can have an idea of how our numbers will look at our various high schools as we move forward into the fall. I want to thank everyone for attending. At this time, Dr. Brochu, comments from you?
No comments.
Garrick? Okay. Thank everyone for coming out tonight. This meeting stands adjourned.